David Kirk, All Black number.
843.
Real honour for me, mate, because I think there's some special people in my life, and you're one of them. We've had some really interesting times together.
We have.
Both on and off the field. But how would you describe the All Blacks?
Well, one of the greatest rugby team in the world.
That's it.
It's kind of like an extended family, and a family that goes back 130 years, with people you've made commitments to, people you've kind of grown up, people that you've grown up with, people that are really important to you. And the project of the family, the project of the All Blacks is really important to you. You have an obligation to contribute to the success is one thing, but it's also just the furthering, the continued health and well-being of that organism.
Would you have a poem for me? Because we used to start most mornings with a poem when we roomed together. And it was fair to say I didn't know any poets before meeting you.
Do you know the great thing about poets is that they don't write to be understood. And everyone wants you to understand what they mean and understand where they're coming from. And I love, one of the poems I love is about a guy going out in the morning and seeing a hawk flying. And just sort of celebrating the beauty of the world. So I'll just start with a few early lines of it, and then we can see where it goes. I caught this morning's minion, kingdom of daylight's dauphin, dapple dawn-drawn falcon, in his riding of the rolling level underneath him steady air, and striding high there, how he rung upon the rein of a wimpling wing in his ecstasy. Then off forth on swing, like a skate seal, sweep smooth through a bow bend. The hurl and gliding rebuffed the big wind. My heart in hiding stared for a bird, the achieve of the mastery of the thing.
Beautiful, David. That takes me way back to when we were rooming, when I just wanted to go and get breakfast and I had to listen to one of your poems. How good. What did you think they represented when you made the All Blacks?
Yeah, well, in a material sense, we obviously represented our country. We represented ourselves, we represented our families. I always thought also we represented the future of the game. It was our job as the All Blacks to be the best team in the world and to push back the boundaries of how rugby could be played. We had to play the game better than anyone else, and just being the best, setting a standard that other people could aspire to.
What were the values?
The values for me, I think values are actually personal at times. Obviously, there's the team values, but values were excellence, absolute focus on being the best you could possibly be, but also learning, that striving, that trying to be the best player you can possibly be and trying to play in the best team that has ever played the game. And I was so lucky to play in an era, as you were, where we could genuinely say that was true. I think that 1987 team, and I didn't go on with it, but you went on in later years, and you won, didn't lose for 2 years or 2.5 years or something. I mean, that was the best team that's ever played rugby at the time.
Are they the two values that you've taken into your business life?
Another strong one is commitment to other people. You know, your obligation to do things for other people, to be a giver, to be someone who gives to the team to help the team succeed, and potentially at your own cost. But usually not. But usually the two go together. So that sense of commitment to a team and being a giver is part of it. And if we just stop on those three, there obviously are others. And this is the thing that people don't talk about as much. They're always looking for a material place where these things can be valuable. But in your engagement with friends and building friends and being part of groups, including your family, things like that, focusing on being the best you can be, focusing on learning and developing, and focusing on being committed to seeing the success of other people. I think those are really important values.
Can you remember a time where you thought that your commitment or learning or those values that you spoke about weren't there and you had to change in the rugby sense?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it was situational. It was, teams were selected that weren't strong enough, weren't playing well enough. And, there were just a lot of young, the 83 tour, my very first tour to England and Scotland, we drew the test against Scotland and lost the test against England. And I was in the reserves at that point. So I sort of had a vision of it all. And it wasn't that people weren't trying. It wasn't that people didn't care about being the best All Black they could be. And even though there were some experienced people and they tried their best to pass things on, there wasn't quite the leadership group that was needed there, but it also there wasn't the time really on a short tour.
You moved forward into a more experienced role, ended up being captain for us in 87, which was amazing. What did you learn? What did you want to change when you came off that tour?
Well, I think mostly it was that we do need, to some extent, we need better players. There were a lot of players who were replacing players who were unavailable for that tour. So the development programs need to develop the best players, and we need depth in positions. So we probably didn't really have enough playing depth, high quality playing depth at the time.
What about you, though?
For me, it was just focus on, this is right through my career until I got to the top, and I was still doing it at the end. It's just focusing on what you've got to do. What's your role? What's your job? What do you have to be the best at? I'm dividing myself between player and captain here. Just as a player, be involved in the game, anticipate the game. So constantly thinking about what are the things I need to do to be most effective in my position, to be the best in New Zealand in my position.
Did you take that philosophy into business? You've been an incredibly successful businessman.
Yeah, I did. The philosophy I took into business was you're only as good as your next game. I could be successful in one role and then I moved to another role, and I said to myself every time that happened, you're going back to scratch. You have now got to work your way to a different level. You have no right to be in this job just because you were successful in a previous job. And that was very much an All Black thing. You go up through the grades in New Zealand rugby, you have no right to be there just because you were okay at provincial rugby. Doesn't mean to say you're good enough to be an All Black. You have to prove yourself at that top level.
So describe a learning mentality you've spoken about as one of your core values. How did you do that as a player, and then how do you continue to do that?
Well, I think innate ferocious competitiveness. You just don't want to be beaten. You don't want someone else to take your place. And that is, it's just built into you. I mean, I was like...
Can't learn it?
You can learn it. You have to learn it. You won't go to the top if you don't have it. But it's you can see in little kids, some little kids they're bad-tempered and bad losers, sore losers when they're little. I was definitely.
Cry when you lose. Arsene Wenger once said, when he got asked how he picks people coming up through the grades, he says, I pick the ones that cry when they lose, because you're never going to coach that out of them.
Yeah, but just that competitiveness, that desire to be better than the next person, and then that does translate into wanting the team you're playing in to be better than any other team. I mean, we played in that great Auckland era of rugby, and we played that great Ranfurly Shield, which we're all desperate to beat Canterbury. We wouldn't hate them. We admired them for what their capability was, but we wanted to be better than them.
You mentioned a couple of things that really intrigued me, which is the bad side of competitiveness. How do you identify that and then possibly turn it into a positive and modernize it, I guess? So some of the values that we talk about, like you would quite easily come off the field and say, you weren't very good today, JK. And I'll say, well, neither are you, right? And the competitiveness would come back. But how do we modernize some of those things around, you want to be competitive, but you also need to search inside, look in the mirror, as we say. So what was the process that you go, okay, I'm a competitor, this is the really good parts of it. How do I tame those and turn them into positive, some of the negative bits, like blaming other people and stuff?
Yeah, well, we have to ask the first question, which is, do we want to modernize them? What does modernizing mean? What do you lose if you modernize something? I think we can probably agree that blaming someone else and saying, oh, you played well, but they played badly, that's why we lost. It is human nature, but you've got to control that. And this is where training and age and experience and coaches, great coaches, life coaches as opposed to rugby coaches, can have a big influence on you. They help you deal with those emotions which are negative for the team. And that's what maturity is. And that's what people look for in leaders, after all, people who have mastered what are negative manifestations of otherwise positive parts of their personality, like being too competitive and being negatively competitive by blaming other people. But you get through that, you get over that, and you, as a leader or a captain, you're able to coach other people. And actually, not so much coaching, just model it. People look at leaders and say, I'd like to be like that.
And getting to the learning piece, how did you do that as an All Black? So what did it look like? So an open learning mindset, I think, is one of my core values as a person. I never want to stop growing. So how did you do that in the All Blacks, and then how did you take that into the business world?
Yeah, this is really interesting because I think this has changed in the All Blacks, and I don't know, and I'm certainly don't have a lot of evidence to say it's a change for the good. But the balance between what we taught ourselves as a team, I learned from so many other players. You would tell me about kicking and how far to go back and how high to kick the ball and
probably not kicking, but I understand.
Yeah, I would do the kicking, you'd do the running, the chasing, but you were giving me advice about how far to kick it, how high to kick it, how close to the sideline to kick it. So I was getting all of this advice from other people. And Grant Fox, as you know, great number 10 for New Zealand rugby, couldn't shut up. He was constantly giving everyone advice about everything, and honestly, most of the time he was right. And so I learned way more from players. And who do you think I learned how to put the ball into the scrum from? It was from hookers who were desperate never to have a tight head against them. Yeah. And who do I learn scrummaging from? Standing here, I learned it from the front row. And the scrum setup was all learned from what the forwards told me was the right way to have a scrum, which was to be standing up before we got there, to make sure I'm right at the tunnel before they go down, wait for the hit, wait for the signal. Everything like that was all taught on the field by the players.
So let me just take you back a wee bit. How would you describe the moment you got named for the All Blacks? Can you remember it?
Yeah, I do. I remember it really well. I know exactly where I was. I was in the changing rooms in Pukekohe, at that funny little basin ground they've got there that floods every time it rains.
The kids slide down the mud, which is pretty cool.
Just played for Otago against counties. But anyway, I was there with the Otago team. And we're standing around. We knew that the All Blacks were being named that night, but no one knew when. And this county's administrator, woman, came rushing over to me, threw her arms around me, and said, "You're in, you got picked." I didn't know. I'd never seen her before in my life. It was it was brilliant, yeah.
When you got into the side, what were you expecting and what was different?
I didn't really know what to expect when we first assembled. You just get together and there's all these players you haven't played with, you don't know. Never played with them before, but some of them are, Murray Mexted and Mark Shaw and Stu Wilson and Bernie Fraser and icons of the game. Yeah. I don't know. For me, it was just like, I want to see I just want to get the measure of these people. I was just like, I want to see what the vibe is here, how they flow, what they do. But pretty early on, and this is kind of probably the leadership bones coming through for me. Pretty early on, I was like, this is a team. This is a contribution. We need to be a team. We need to be performing together as a team. But it was all about then. I suppose it was just trying to get a handle on the core big players. That was my first thing. Secondly, it would be understanding the norms and expectations of being in that environment.
How did you contribute when you were there early? And then obviously you progressed into being one of our leaders.
Yeah, well, as always, when you contribute early, the first and probably most important thing through your whole All Black career is to be the best player you possibly can in your position.
Full stop.
Yeah, full stop. But if you're not there helping your team winning, if the team in any ways thinks it's somewhat handicapped by having you on the field, regardless of your leadership.
So you can have a game or two off.
Just like everyone says, form is temporary and class is permanent. Yeah. The fact of the matter is, if you're good enough, you've got to be playing at a level that is equal to the best in the country and hopefully the best in the world.
So that was your focus?
That was my first focus, because my first focus was getting in the team and staying in the team. I went 2 years, never got on the field. I was in the All Blacks. I didn't get on the field in a test match.
They talk about test matches nowadays. So when I get announced, they say 63 tests, but I played 96 games. Yeah. And some of those other games, as you and I played in with France, were just as hard. So.
Yeah, but that's 11. That is absolutely right. You're trying to get into the test team and you're going on these long tours and you're playing all the midweek games. So you're supporting the guy that's playing, that's ahead of you and is playing the Saturday games and the test matches. But at the same time, you're trying to displace him. You're looking at his game, you're trying to figure out what it is that you can do better than him.
People often ask me what happens in the All Blacks. And normally I say, well, if you get dropped for someone, they room you together so that you can understand that we're a team and we've got to try and help each other. But it's not an easy thing to do. No. Someone else is making that decision. And so it's not that person's fault.
Yeah.
even when you get dropped, right? So tell me how you dealt with the pressure of being captain, because one thing I loved about your leadership was your ability on the field to read the game, understand what we needed to do. Your intelligence around it was always really, really on point. How did you deal with going from the best player to then getting the captaincy, and is it something you worried about? How are the emotions?
No, I didn't worry about it. I always enjoyed captaincy, because partly for the reason that you've mentioned, that I was constantly involved in the flow of the game. I find it hard to describe it for people, but you kind of know it because you were there. You get the feel for the game. You understand the flow of the game, and I think the halfback is a really good position for that. So you need a halfback that's prepared to step up and say things, because you understand when we have scrums, when we have mauls, and when you're at the breakdown, and when people are getting smashed out of the way, and or they're coming at you as a halfback. You know the flow of that physical play, and if you feel like you're physically on top, you double down on that and you do more of that, more driving. So you'd have this feeling about where were the gaps, where were the opportunities, and I always knew there were opportunities with, say, Buck 8, 9, 8, 9, 14, Buck, incredibly powerful, is definitely going to commit the blindside flanker. They're going to be hanging off him. Possibly the number 8 will stop thinking, shit, this Buck might go through the blindside flanker. I've got to hold a bit. I'm on the outside. He gives me the pass. I can draw the winger or give it to you. You just get a feel for when those things are on, when it looks like the opposition is struggling a bit. The flankers are going to be hanging on the scrum a bit too long. Their fullback's a bit too far to the left. You see those things and it's intuitive, and you go.
Yeah, if I can take it a little bit away from the technical side, because I totally get that. I say to people that, when you play a game of basketball, the ebb and flow of the game often is controlled by the coach who gives a timeout. What I've felt that leaders need to do on the field is they need to understand that ebb and flow and make decisions like, are we going to kick for the corner, turn around, your forwards are really tired, no, let's take a shot at goal, for example. But how did you distract yourself or extract yourself from being in the moment and being the best player to making those leadership decisions? It's
an excellent question, and a different one. And my truthful answer about being on the rugby field and understanding how you have the capacity to step back, I don't really know. I mean, I think you just have to develop. I think it's experience. You just have to develop the capacity.
So it's the same thing. Your focus was technically based around you being the greatest 9, but you also at the same time had the ability to read what was going on around you.
I remember when we visited Australia, and we had that long tour to Australia. You injured your shoulder in that tackle, had your surgery done in Adelaide.
You actually were very nice to me because you told me what it was.
Yeah, it was bad. But during that tour, we were in Canberra. We went to the Australian Institute of Sport, and I remember we were just talking to the people there, and I remember a framework that they set up, which was 4 quadrants, and it was broad focus and narrow focus, and it was internal focus and external focus. But they did say the best athletes need to develop the capacity to move between the quadrants. So broad external focus, you need to be looking at the field and understanding what's the right thing to do. Narrow internal focus, you need to be executing your own skills very effectively, or there'd be a narrow external focus. Yeah.
So have you developed that in the business world, and what are the core differences between your greatness on the field to be able to multitask doing all those things?
I think in business is a very clear distinction between big picture and small picture, and it is really important, and you do have to be able to move between those two things, particularly if you go to the top level. If you're the chief executive of a big corporation or the chairman of a board of a complex company, you really need to develop the big picture. But the small picture is understanding what your competitive advantage is and having an organisation which can relentlessly execute on that competitive advantage.
So it's really tough. The opposition are ahead by 10 points. You've got a feeling you know what needs to change. How did you have the confidence to trust that decision making?
Because I just did. I honestly, after I'd played enough games, when I said I had a feel, you said you have a feeling you know what's got to change. It wasn't that. It was as I in my own self, I knew what had to change. But the thing about it is not being very specific. It's not specific technical things about a particular position. It's about mental state. That's what's got to change. And if the team's 10 points behind, conversion to come, waiting under their own posts, what does the captain say? The captain doesn't give some big rack up, we've got to do better, boys. It's got to be, because people at that point, we've got 15, 20 minutes to go, we're 10 points behind. People's minds are spinning and thinking the worst, thinking, we might lose. You've got to get people to focus on simple, clear things that they have to do. So you look at the guy who's going to do the kickoff, and you say, we're going to do a short kickoff. You've got to get it high. Then you look at the lock or the wing or whoever's going to run through and jump for it. You are going to get this ball back for us. You lay out the future for people in a set of specific steps for them, and in a simple, uncomplicated way. This is what you have to do. And then they get their mind back on the game. Okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm in this game. And you obviously also say clearly to people, we can win this. We are going to win this. What you have to do is execute these small things relentlessly until this game's over.
Fantastic. I've been out on the field when you've done that. Let's say the first plan doesn't work out. So, JK, you're going to run and you're going to catch this ball. We're going to kick it left, and then JK knocks it on. Do you then readjust that strategy but keep the same theory?
Yeah, you do. You run something different. You run different moves, of course. But I always used to say to people, he used to say to me, this was soon after I retired and everything, what's the secret of the All Blacks? Why is it that you guys are always winning all the time? And I said, it's pretty simple, but you mightn't think it's like much of a secret, but basically all we do is we do the basics. We do the basics for longer and harder than anyone else.
Let me take you back a wee bit, because you were probably one of the most unique players to ever play for the All Blacks, because you decided to leave. You decided that you were going to retire early, at an early age, probably in the peak of your career, and pursue a career in Oxford.
It was different in those days, of course. It was amateur. I was only 26. I had a scholarship to go to Oxford, Rhodes Scholarship. I had deferred it for 2 years. I couldn't defer it another year, so it was a real life choice. And so they're good choices, but continue playing for the All Blacks or take a Rhodes Scholarship and go to Oxford University. I had to choose one or the other.
Who did you play for?
You play for a lot of people when you play for the All Blacks. You play for your country above all else, I think, and in the legacy of the jersey. You go in there. I walked in. I just love walking into the changing rooms and seeing my jersey hung with a number on the back. And instead of seeing that 9, I would not see myself. I would see people as far back as Chris Laidlaw, Sid Going, Trapper, Mark Donaldson.
So how did they inspire you? What is the secret of that? Because
I watched them as a kid, and I was watching them as a kid, and I was thinking, and some part of me was thinking, oh God, wouldn't it be cool if I was in that jersey? And it's almost surreal to walk into the changing room, even after you've played quite a few test matches, and see the jersey that you're going to put on, that when you were an 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old kid, you watched other people wear and dream that one day you'd be wearing it. That kind of dream, that pinch me moment, doesn't go away. It's not just the first test. It's kind of every test, and it's related to that legacy that you're carrying on. You could call it a burden, but if you're playing well and the team's playing well, you carry that burden lightly.
It should be a burden, shouldn't it? But it should be carried lightly, because what did you want to leave in the jersey then?
Yeah.
Did you want the next guy to come in and
look at it and say, shit, that's David Kirk's jersey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. That's 100% what you want to do. You want to be a great All Black. You want people that come in the future to say, I'm wearing the same jersey that David Kirk wore. And I think that's the greatest compliment you can be given as an All Black.
You've been around the game now for as long as me. How would you sum up greatness in that sense then? If you want to be a great All Black, would there be 3 or 4 things that come to the top of your mind around character, ability, values? Yeah, I mean, amongst the public that don't know you, you just have to play really well, and in particular, you have to play well in the big games. The big matches, the big series, the World Cups, the against the best opposition. People need to see you as the sort of player that steps up and is part of the team that wins the big games. The other part of it, of course, is internally with the team. Yeah. You want your teammates to say, I love that guy.
I love playing with him. I love rooming with him. He could be as annoying as hell, but and I say that and think that, and it's often you just think it. You don't even say it. You're just on your own. You're out for a walk somewhere, not thinking about anything, and you think, oh, I remember when I was doing this with the guys, and you just sort of you love it. Whether it's the singing after the game, whether it's difficult decisions that were made on the game, it's tries that were scored, it's losses, but brought you closer together. There's just you want other people to think about you the way you think about some of your best friends that you've played with.
And your legacy, right?
Yeah, and your legacy.
So how did you prepare? So I'll take people back to our room. Besides quoting, poetry, and you were often reading, which is something that I learnt and really cherished later on in my career. But how did you prepare for a test match?
Well, the preparation really started when you assembled. So, you're part of the team, you found your room, you got your room set up, your gear set up the way you wanted it set up in the room, and then you're into whatever the rhythm of the team was, and that would be lunch, and that would be training, and it would be the right sort of training. You had in your own mind what training you wanted to do yourself, because sometimes you play a game, it might not be a test match, you've played the week before for the provincial, and your passing wasn't right, or you just don't feel right. So you have some extra work that you want to do inside your own mind. What do I need to work on? What do I need to work on? So you can do all the team training and everything, but you've also got your own things ticking over in your head, things you want to make sure you absolutely execute on, and you're a bit worried about you're not quite on point yet. So there'd be that, and then there'd be the evening. I just go with the flow, basically, dinners, stuff like that. Next morning, back into team meetings, making sure you're on time, making sure you're disciplined.
So you enjoyed the process?
I enjoyed the process, and I wanted the process. I wanted something that led me through the week and got me into the right frame of mind.
But what about the mental side? How did you prepare for that?
The mental side comes from two sources, I think. One, it comes from the build-up of the team. If the team there's an edge, there's an anxiety, there's a fear, there's just we need to win. In the team, there's just building. We are the All Blacks. We've got to go on the field and sit down. We've got to win. But you have your own too. You have your own fears.
What was your fear?
I was scared of losing. I was scared of letting my teammates down. Yeah, I was just scared of not being the player I could be. You feel that there's limited. At some point in your career, you think this is not going to last forever. I've only, I don't know what the number of games left are, but I've only got so many games left, and I better make the most of them.
So we're lying there. I'm watching Hogan's Heroes, and you're reading your medical book, and we both have these fears coming into our mind, whatever they are. I mean, how did you deal with them mentally?
I didn't try to fight them. I just thought that was part of the process. It's okay. It's good to be afraid. It's good to be anxious. It's good to be on edge.
What sort of sacrifices did you make to be an All Black?
I think I sacrificed, like everyone, you sacrifice your body to some extent. I've had, been knocked out a few times. I've had broken nose. I've had knee operation. I've had a torn pectoral muscle. Lots of soft tissue injuries and sprains, and that's the same as everyone. And cuts in my eyebrows and cuts in my ears. Where you put it, cut in my ear on Eden Park once when I tried to tackle you, and your boot collected my ear.
Told you not to tackle me.
Yeah, well, I walk away from a challenge. But you put your body on the line, and that's part of the build up as well. We were talking about before. Part of the anxiety is about getting yourself into that frame of mind where you actually, you go out of the trench, you go over the wall.
I know this is an interesting question because both you and I didn't like some of the rituals that were associated with some of the teams we're in, so we fought against that. But what were some of the rituals in the All Blacks that you really enjoyed? I
like the singing on the bus and in the changing room. As always the same people who play guitar, and you love those people. I liked the no one left behind. You go out for a few drinks and everything. There's no way any player would be left on his own if they'd drunk a bit or in a difficult situation. Everyone, you always stuck together. You always helped each other out. And frankly, if people had drunk too much or were being stupid and misbehaving, they were actually, grabbed by the ear and taken home. So we looked after each other, and we never let each other get in trouble. And it was a failure for the team if someone, did something stupid and brought a bit of dishonour to the jersey.
How do you think you create, or we created, a sense of belonging? What was the belonging, and how would you how ddid you try and create it post not being in the All Blacks?
I think the legacy is a big part of belonging. You borrow the jersey. You have a time to wear that jersey, then you pass it on to someone else. So you belong to something that started before you and something that will go on after you. So I think that's as much as anything. I think also just being New Zealanders, being Kiwis, being out there, being in the UK, being in Australia, whatever we are, we're kind of in enemy territory. we're there, and we're there to win. I think in terms of carrying that on after you played, it's actually really hard. I think family is probably the closest you get to it, because when you have your own family, you feel very bonded and you all belong together and you do things together as a family. Of course, kids grow up and that changes, but you have a period when that's the case.
Are you proud of the legacy you left in the jersey?
Yeah, I am. And I'm proud of it because it's a slightly different legacy. It's a legacy that I do hear people talk to me from time to time. It's a legacy about being decent in every circumstance, but also pushing back against the big man, the big silent stereotypical kind of stern and grumpy giants. And I could do both, fun and engagement and drag people along to art galleries and read books and recite poetry and stuff like that, just for fun, really.
To the courthouse in Argentina to see to the
Life of Brian in Spanish.
The Life of Brian in Spanish, but also a very big moment in my life was when you took me to the courthouse in Argentina when they were putting on trial the people that pushed all those kids out of the Hercules planes over the Pacific Ocean, and the mums were outside holding. And you explained to me the whole thing. Did you feel like the poet you described at the beginning of this session sometimes, that you were not in that mold and you needed to change it, and it's important to change?
Yeah, I think it's important to be part of. You've got to be a part of the culture. You've got to be a part of who that team is. But you can do that, and I think one of the things I was able to demonstrate to some people at some times is you can do that. You can be a somewhat different person in doing that. And you can even be the leader and do that. I mean, I was always thinking as the captain, how can I best put to the team what the next challenge is? You've
run Ballador, you've been a script writer for the Prime Minister of New Zealand, you're a doctor, you're a Rhodes Scholar, you've had an incredibly beautiful family with Bridget and your boys, which is amazing. You're now chairman of the New Zealand Rugby Union. It's a full circle moment.
Yeah, I mean, it is a full circle moment, that's right. And it's actually something I never really expected. So I never set out to close the circle. But the opportunity arose and it was the right thing to do, and I'm very happy that I have done it. We've got very clear goals, and they it sounds businessy like to recite them, but they're all on the same level. But the ones that bubble to me first really are, we've got to have our teams in black continuing to win. We've got to continue to be the greatest rugby playing nation in the world. Number two, we've got to have a thriving community game. And that's partly because it feeds the All Black machine, if you like, or it feeds the high performance machine. We've got players coming through, and the fact that we play from a young age and we have all these intuitive skills that just come from running around in bare feet and paddocks, that is crucial to us in the end, at the very end, when we get the best possible players on the field.
Last question. We're 5-10 years down the track, and I ask someone in the public to tell me the two values that David Kirk stood for, both as a player and both as a chairman and a business leader. What would you like them to say?
Two values. I mean, there's a lot. I would go through, I would say authenticity. Be yourself.
Yep.
Just being your authentic person at any time. And I would say constant striving for improvement through learning or practice or whatever it is. Just you can always get better. You can always be better at what you do. There's another peak you can scale.
Been a pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Do
you want to finish us with a little short poem?
No, I think I'm finished.
Good, because I don't want to hear another one.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.